everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are EBS, your experienced technology partner. We specialize in the deployment of Sage Business Management and Microsoft solutions, managed services, and secure on-premises and cloud-based infrastructure. The business will be, or is, 45 years old now. My name is Darren Tolley, and I am one of the account managers here at EBS. Today, we are joined by Phocas, who we partner with to help you make the most of your Sage data through analytics, financial reporting, and budgeting and forecasting. This is the second of 3 webinars we are delivering together, and today we're focusing on Phocas Financial Statements. Last month, we covered Phocas Analytics, and the recording of that is on our YouTube channel. In January, we will cover budgeting and forecasting. Watch out for your invitation to this. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Adam Butler, who will take us through how Phocas Financial Statements easily produce dynamic profit and loss, balance sheet and cash flow statements from Sage 200 data and more. We are recording today's presentation and we'll make this available to you in the next few days. There are lots of recordings on our YouTube channel. Remember to hit subscribe to receive notifications when we load new videos. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, or there will be an opportunity at the end of the presentation in the Q&A session. Without further ado, I will pass you over to Adam. Morning, Adam.
Morning, Darren. Thanks for having me on. So,
it's our pleasure.
Thank you very much. So we'll go into the presentation. So today is all around driving growth for EBS clients, financial planning with Phocas. So a bit of a run through of the session today. So the areas I aim to cover are how to integrate data that enhances financial reporting accuracy and speed, reducing spreadsheet hours to gain more for value-added activities, and then how to use financial planning and analysis, FP&A, to create value. The use of dashboards and visualizations for quicker insights into financial performance, and then simplifying the month-end with automated customizable financial statements. So that's what we're going to cover. But before we go into the detail around that, a little bit about Phocas. Who are Phocas? Phocas, very simple, have a very strong mission statement, which is we help our customers feel good about data, whether that's analytical, financial, or budgeting. Fundamentally, everything we do is centered around this philosophy. In terms of the business at a glance, Phocas isn't a new business. We've been going for 23 years. We are B Corp certified, so we do place a lot of emphasis on our environmental impact. We've got over 2,800 customers, over 200 Sage customers, and we've got offices worldwide. In terms of our Sage customers, we've got lots of customers across a range of different industries and verticals, all utilizing Phocas to ultimately help them get through their challenges and streamline a lot of their processes. In terms of why Phocas? So Phocas is a platform that connects to across all the board, all the Sage products, whether you're looking at analytics, whether you're looking at financial statements, or looking at budgeting and forecasting, or even rebates. Phocas is a platform that enables multiple stakeholders within the business to fundamentally get answers to their data, from their data, much quicker. So, for example, if you're at the CEO or board level and you want to stay informed and confident with the direction the business is heading, you can get that from a very high top-down view. Or whether you're a CFO that needs to power the business through and make sure the business is performing to sustain growth or work on efficiencies, then your Phocas will enable you to make those decisions quicker. Or if it's more producing the financial reporting and going into the nitty-gritty details and making sure that everything is by the book, again, getting that actionable insight can help streamline a lot of the manual processes that are in place. Or even for the sales and operations team, it could be working in silos. What are the sales team driving the sales growth? The operations feeding that growth by applying the right tactical deployment of inventory and stock. But collaborating across both departments is a lot easier when everyone can see one source of the truth. Now, in terms of driving results, we see a full range of results across our customer base. It could be in the form of, like, for example, 40% increased sales via new opportunities, 300% increase in reporting speed, 70% decrease in reporting IT requests. So having to always rely on the IT infrastructure to produce those reporting requirements. 40% decrease in administration costs. So having to, again, take away the process of having to go via a third party to really administer any changes. 8% reduction in inventory holding costs by having quicker insights to make decisions quicker, or 50% reduction in month-end close time, which is quite a big one for finance teams, because I'll showcase a little bit of this towards the end of the demo when we go into the demonstration side, but it could be just something as simple as automating all of the manual manipulations that are currently being done, could lead to that level of time saved. But when it comes to Sage, I mean, we speak to a lot of Sage businesses here at Phocas, and in particular, the key four themes that we tend to hear are usually centered around not being able to have the right visibility of data, whether that's doing variance analysis, whether that's looking at a multi-business approach, it could be a multi-branch or multi-cost center approach. Having that true visibility of what's going on within those statement structures tends to be quite common. This can also then lead to, I suppose, looking at alternative ways to get the level of detail that's required from that lack of visibility, which often leads a lot of teams to rely very much on spreadsheets to effectively manipulate the data into a working framework to be able to see a snippet of what's going on within the business. But that approach tends to have a knock-on effect in terms of the way that the data is usually dumped out of the trial balance. Can be fairly static, can only give in a very snippet of the truth over a certain period of time. So that could be good for just looking at a certain cost center at a certain point of the year. But then when you want to compare that against how you performed at the same point last quarter, it can be very challenging to pull that framework together and then attempt to then visualize that dynamically. And often it's usually a small number of people that are doing the reporting process or manipulations that could further add complications in terms of getting additional questions answered from the structure that's already in place. So what does making sense of your data within Sage look like in terms of the building blocks? So it's almost like a 5-step process. So everyone has data to start with, fed directly from Sage, which is great at picking up all of the transactional steps. But then the next logical step into make it into an actionable framework is sorting that data. So it could be from a financial perspective, sorting the cost centers, departmental breakdowns, how multi-currency may fit into certain businesses, or how you're actually going to consolidate the group of multiple subsidiaries or branches or breakdowns. Once you've arranged that, then you've got the structure in place. You can then start to do some variance analysis, some cost center analysis, or any form of analysis once that's in place. And then you could then start putting a framework in place of, I know what I'm looking at I'm just going to focus on the P&L in this instance, from a cost center breakdown. I've got my currencies in place. I know how it rolls up into the group. The next logical step is then, well, how do I tell the story? Or how do I build that to represent that structure visually? And that could be in the form of lots of charts, lots of dashboards, and a nice flow through. Once that's in place, then you will then build out and tell the story. So you know the data structures, you know how the data is going to be presented visually. It's then talking through the wider business on how the business is actually performing, why certain things are up, why certain things are down, and what's the plan going forwards in the future. And this leads to what we see is quite a common approach to tackling financial reporting. So it's effectively looking at purchasing, sales, or collaboration of data together. So typically, in this example, we've just got like a Sage X3 as example. It could be just um, looking at your financial performance, such as your sales ledger, and then breaking that down into, well, what's the detail behind the sales ledger? Why is our revenue at this figure? What's the breakdown from a customer perspective, a product perspective, a vertical sales channel that we have? Could be a retail. It's getting that finite detail in one place, but then linking that together with being able to visualize and see all of that data in one source of the truth, then naturally frees up a lot of teams' time to then start exploring not only the financial side of things, but then to look at, well, how are we performing year to date against budget? And then what if we did X percentage next quarter? What impact is that going to have to our start point at the financial half year or approaching the financial half year, and then start modeling scenarios as well? And we see that as a common approach across all Sage customers, whether it be business running 50, 200, X3, or even Intact. So what we tend to, when I'm speaking to businesses, we tend to see quite a traditional approach to financial reporting. So it's effectively led by the Office of Finance. It could be exporting the trial balance out of Sage, then effectively applying the manual manipulations to get it to a workable state. And then from there, it's then working with multiple versions or one version or multiple stakeholders feeding into the financial reporting. And then typically it gets emailed out towards the month end and then as a pack. And then it's then reviewed, scrutinized at that point of month end. You may get a couple of questions around the performance based on the information that's in the pack, but then it's very difficult to then tell the story of the certain questions that come up within that process. So it has to be fairly locked down. It has to be fairly tight into what's contained within the pack. And then anything that tends to come up tends to be mocked up after the fact, which could lead to further time to investigate. It's quite a long process, but that's what typically we see is the way that it's currently being done. But the way that Phocas moves into that is effectively taking all the pieces within that framework. So your CFO, your finance controller, your board, even though we've not got it on here, but we've got a CEO, COO, all the stakeholders, and then moving them to a dynamic framework where everyone can feed into this process and be a part of that process dynamically. So a CEO might want to see the top-down figures. How are we tracking as a business? Are we still profitable? How much growth are we sustaining? Where are the areas we're growing in? Or from the complete opposite side of the scale, it could be your controller. How are the nominals performing? What's up? What's down? Are we managing our expenses correctly? Are marketing staying on course for budget? CFO is looking at it from a perspective of, well, how agile is the business? What are our profitability ratios looking like? What's our asset turnover looking like? All of this in Phocas enables all stakeholders to collaboratively look at certain pockets of their data, but all looking at the same source and getting the same answers, but being able to then splice and dice their particular interest and get that actionable feedback straight away. So what does that look like from a product perspective in financial statements? So the key to Phocas Financial Statements is around enabling financial teams to have a human-friendly approach to software. It naturally follows almost like a common sense methodology where what you expect to see in the tool is there. And this approach has come from a lot of customer-led growth and feedback. So we focused it around the main outputs and feedback we've got from customers. So things such as transforming your data, having an accurate, up-to-date data directly from source, being able to customize the views to bend to what you wish to see, whilst also having the automation side of things flowing through. So that you might change to look at a quarterly view at a branch level, cost center level, but it's not going to break anything. It's simply just going to update. Another one we see within the product is around tracking lives versus actuals at any time. So being able to, it's great to be able to manipulate the statements and go to certain points of time, adding additional layers. But what what if you want to go down to see an individual journal? You've followed your train of thought. You don't want to hop between two systems. You just want to know, well, what was in that journal? We made a decision on this. We're over budget in this particular nominal. I want to dive into the journals. Well, that's also there as well. So it's keeping you in a solution that enables you to be agile with your train of thought, and the solution is designed to keep up with that workflow. And then additionally to this, the thing that tends to be an afterthought we tend to hear when we speak to businesses, the manual the manual reporting takes up so much time. I don't have time to start to present the data. So we've enabled lots of teams to be able to create powerful visualizations that would take hours in seconds. And then again, further adding to that benefit of being able to tell your story quickly and dynamically as well. So enough talk. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you into the product and showcase just a few of those areas that we've covered up until this point. So a good place to start is either what we see as the end point of the process or the start point of the process, depending on where you are within your financial reporting month. So as we're the 20th, we're probably gearing up towards month end. As a CFO, I've got a CFO dashboard as an example here. And within my business, I've got multiple companies that form part of a group, and I can see how the consolidated business is performing. But the real beauty of what you see on the screen here with Phocas is that all of these widgets are dynamically added to this view, and they were created by myself. They weren't created by a specialist IT team. It was purely built by me as the CFO and my team. So I can add to these, I can reduce this down, I can give full access to people to view this, or restricted access on certain stakeholders. So I might say company A stakeholder logs in and they will only see company A's performance. But what it means is it really helps me from my role to be able to then go in and see, right, well, our sales is up against budget. I've got my gross profit at a snapshot. I've got my operating profit tracking okay. I can see very quickly how many accounts we've got over budget or under budget. I can see how we're performing over the last rolling 12 months across our profitability, our cost of sales, and our EBITDA. I can then see our revenue as a waterfall and our net profit of tax. So over our financial year to date, so I can see how each month is contributing to the total performance. I've then got my P&L in there to talk through. So just a very high level, our variances across our revenue, our cost of sales, our profit, and however you structure your P&L will be reflected in this, and I'll cover that shortly. I then have our balance sheet, so I can then look at all of our assets, our liability and our equity, and really start to track, in this case, business case, our inventory, our impact on inventory, our debtor days, how is that affecting the business on our balance sheet? And then because Phocas is a data agnostic tool, I can also put in my accounts receivable. And then should I want to go off and analyze, well, why have we got 56 accounts that are overdue? With one click of a button, I can go off and find out why those accounts were overdue as well. We can also see our cash position, so we can look at our cash flow analysis, and then we can also then look at allocated budget versus spend for certain departments as a departmental breakdown, which we see is quite common across some businesses. But the real power of the dashboarding approach within Phocas, it serves that board pack summary in essence. So if I wanted to just look at company A, for example, see how company A is attributing to the group, I can now use Phocas and filter and drill into company A. So I don't need to go off and run a separate report, don't need to dump the trial balance. Phocas has simply updated company A's trends, so I can see that just here. And speaking of board packs and board reports, there's lots of ways you can create board packs and board reports within the tool. So here's an example of the notes for the period, similar structure in terms of the metrics and KPIs around total COGS, operating costs, our financial year-to-date summary, very high level. We've then got the trend analysis, similar to the last dashboard, but going into a lot more detail around the COGS. And the real emphasis here is on modeling these views to match your business requirements. It's very easy to produce these reports and model these views. So for example, on the last dashboard, there was a little bit about our cash position and cash in the bank, but not a direct detailed breakdown of cash flow, which we've got on this particular dashboard to really show at the board level the actual cash position of the business in terms of our cash and then our total net cash from activities. So it's a very powerful way to really tell the story of how the business is performing. You can then, as a CFO, I am a CFO in my example, I've then got the ability to talk through at the board level or at the month-end level, how healthy is the business by using Phocas to do the financial ratios that we've got in around liquidity, profitability, and efficiency, and actually really stress test and see how healthy are we. We're selling a lot, but we've got a lot of dead stock on our shelf. So actually, the health of the business isn't truly as strong as we think because we're not shifting that dead stock. So it really enables finance teams to be able to make these powerful decisions without having to do all of the grunt work in the background to manually produce these types of KPIs. And how that happens, in essence, is within the front end of the financial statements product. So this is a P&L that we've got here, and you're not limited to certain P&Ls, certain balance sheets, certain cash flow statements. You will have your trial balance there, and it's all pulled directly from Sage. So effectively, one of the key benefits here is that you can build out all of the statements that typically you would do in a spreadsheet with all the level of complexities, all the calculations in place, and then furthermore mapping out the nominal codes to the respective structures that may sit outside of the ERP in Phocas. And then even adding in additional layers of complexity and additional breakdowns that may not sit in Sage. The beauty of this is that because it's connected to Sage and you've built out all these statements with all the structures that you require, it means that every time you come into Phocas, you will always be looking at the actuals from Sage. Now, typically that happens on an overnight refresh, but you can easily do some journal postings in Sage and then hit the build button in Phocas and then get that live pull through. So especially around month end, or if you're doing any sales accruals, you will always be working with the actuals so that you've got the confidence of knowing that this 17.13% down on our percentage of purchases is accurate from the figures that have been pulled directly from the source. Now, the good thing with this is that we typically can then add further complexity to examine the statements very easily in here. So often is the case as you're doing your sales accruals, you're breaking down all of the nominals and you're going into the detail just here. Now, there's a few options with Phocas. You can look at, in this example, we're looking at our current versus previous versus our budget. But let's say, for example, we don't want to just look at the budget for now. In terms of just the activity, we just want to look at the current versus the previous, or even less than that, we might just want to just look at the current, just keeping it very simple. Phocas is a very agile tool that will enable you to change these frameworks and simply just update the figures based on that. So for example, if I wanted to just look at the last financial quarter, I can do that. I'll just change the period very quickly. All the figures have updated and I'm now looking at the financial quarter. If I want to then just pull in the previous and a prior previous period, 2 clicks, the data refreshes. Again, we're working from the actuals and the actual figures from the current, previous and prior previous quarter as comparison. And that's great because it means that you've got the agility to move throughout your data and examine without having to manipulate anything. It's purely just updating with the actuals. But then you might have further complexities that sit within the business just outside of the nominals. So For example, I had a cost center. Mentioned cost center earlier. So I might want to break down the nominals via their respective cost centers. So as I'm going into my operating expenses, I've now broken out the cost centers that have been mapped. And now I can dive into each individual cost center and examine their performance. So I might want to just look at wages in this particular instance. Our wages is currently down against the previous period by quite a lot, by nearly 50%, and the prior previous period as well, by a substantial amount. But I might want to know, well, why were our wages so high in the previous period? What transactions went into that? Now, because we're pulling everything at transaction line level, it's one click away to then get the detail around every single journal posting that was posted around that particular cost center for that particular nominal. So it's a very agile approach to serving those answers up. Another key theme we tend to see when exploring the financial statements is groups of companies or groups of subsidiaries or groups of branches. And that can be very challenging for a lot of solutions out there because it's consolidating multiple P&Ls. It could be, they might be sat in two different ERPs, for example, or on one in Sage, two in Excel, and all over. But with Focus, because we pull everything into one source of the truth, it's only as difficult as knowing what you want to see from the view. So in this case, I just drag up my company dimension. I've now got my aggregated total, and I'm just going to take out some of these, such as the consolidated entities just here. And then now I've got the benefit of seeing how we're performing at group level with all the variance analysis in the current, previous, and prior previous structure that we've just gone through that workflow to create. And then I can then break down individual companies, cost centers, branches, or however you want to splice your data and get the actuals from that structure as well. And you might think, that's brilliant. I might want to save that. That's my work done. You know, that's what you've shown me there. It takes me weeks. I don't want to have to create that every single time. You can just simply save that as a favorite report, even have it emailed, subscribe to it via email, and have it sent to you whenever you need that report. Or you may just want to export that out as an Excel document to make further tweaks, or turn it into a PDF. You can also do that as well. The next logical step that we tend to see once you've created these reports and structures is actually, how do I want to just visualize? I want to visualize my revenue, just simply see my revenue. So within the tool, it's very easy again to just create dynamic visualizations. So I can see all of the companies broken down just here by a bullet bar and line. I could have it as a bullet chart. I could have it as a gauge. I could have it as that's just showing the group, as a value card, as a total consolidated group, or I could have it as a waterfall so I can see the direct impact each business is having to the overall performance of the business as well. And like I showed right at the start, these can be added directly to dashboards to tell that wider story of what's going on within the business. And because Focus has got everything connected and pre-queried, it's just a case of building the building blocks back up to tell that wider story within the board pack just here, so that you can then start drilling down into these key areas and then actually selecting and then letting Focus do the due diligence and break down for you. But that's just a bit of a very high level overview of Focus Financial Statements. Hopefully it's kind of given you some insights around what a different approach to financial reporting entails. It's not as difficult as you think, especially with tools like Focus, because it's designed to work for you, not work against you. So back into the presentation. So in terms of just to sort of round things up, in terms of the solutions that we offer, so we've covered financial statements today. We also have analytics, so you can link the financials to your sales ledger, your purchasing ledger, and get that detailed breakdown on things like sales performance, your margin of sales on the purchasing side, things like number of POs, value of POs, whether they're delivered on time or in full, on time or in full analysis. We also have budgeting and forecasting. I touched on bringing in budgets into financial statements, but if you are finding that you're having to produce budgets on a monthly or quarterly basis, again, with a lot of manual manipulations, within Focus, it's one click of a button, and then it will effectively gives you the building framework to then make very quick decisions. But there'll be more so on that on the next webinar in January. And then we also have a rebates tool. So at the moment, we hear a lot that a lot of businesses are running rebates via Excel. Again, very manual base, lots of errors in the process because it's a high volume and frequency of data, and normally a group of maybe 1 to 5 people running all of the data analysis across inbound customer rebates, supplier rebates, and it can be quite arduous. What Focus does is it effectively gives you a framework to write the rules and then analyze the data once the rules run in the background. But I just wanted to leave with a couple more slides. Biggest, I suppose, thing we hear when I speak to businesses is the use case of Excel versus a reporting tool. Now, the BART Planning and Analytics survey all the performers out there on the market. Against Excel, you can see how Focus is a very highly recommended product. It has very high levels of satisfaction, and that's mainly down to ease of use and being able to follow your train of thought and ultimately get you away from spending all your time financially do financial manipulations and moving towards financial performance analysis. And Focus enables a lot of our customers to do that. And as such, when we did enter the BARC planning survey for the first time this year, we got #1 in reporting analysis and #1 in innovation, because we are a very big disruptor to this space, purely because of the way that we apply financial reporting logic with business intelligence built in has created a perfect way for finance teams to take that next step without having to dive too deep into a complex learning process or complex implementation process. So it naturally follows the next logical step for most businesses. But if you'd like to learn more today, then just take a picture of the QR code. It will take you through to set up a call with myself, one of the team, to run you through your specific scenarios. I would also, if you were interested on the analytics side of what I discussed today, then there is the previous recording from last month that's on the EBS YouTube channel, which covers quite a lot of those areas I've discussed. And then if you are interested on the budgeting side of things, then please tune in for the webinar in January, specifically for budgeting and forecasting on those side of things. But that's everything I wanted to cover today. I will hand over to Darren to wrap things up.
Thank you, Adam. That was very enlightening, as always. There's a couple of questions, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
So could you just talk around what the licensing options are for the solution?
Yeah, great question. So I'll frame it from a financials perspective, so that's the topic of today. So typically, the licensing for financial statements tends to be you'll have a starting point of 2 full users to do administration tasks, so building the statements, producing the dashboards, and effectively the storytelling element of the product. But then what a lot of our customers then will do is then deploy viewer licenses. So they are any licenses for any of the other stakeholders within the business. So it could be CEO, COO, CTO, who can then log in and view the dashboard framework and then still drill down into key areas within what they want to see. So they've got the ability to get the information as a story, but then tell their own story with a viewer license as well.
Thank you for that. If we were to say, yep, we want to go ahead with this, what's the sort of typical time to go live with Phocas?
Yeah, so the typical time to go live on financial statements is anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks. We are a provider that our aim is to get you up and running as quickly as possible. And within that framework, we do 90% of the implementation. So we do all of the data connections, we build out all of the solution, and then we work with you to train you on how the solution works whilst validating all the figures that are pulled directly from source, match what's been pulled into Phocas. And then by the end of the 8-week cycle, you're confident enough to produce your P&L, your balance sheet, and then you can work on the cash flow. But then beyond that, we then have a support infrastructure that wraps around our services so that you've got an account manager, you've got learning resources built into the product, you've even got AI built into the product as well to ask questions as well.
Fantastic. One final one. So we saw how easy it was to view data through dashboards and reports and so on and so forth. If I'm responsible for a particular cost center, can it be restricted so that I can only see my information and restrict access for viewing things like the salaries and the like?
Yeah, most definitely. So it's within Focus, the infrastructure has been built right from the analytics side. So you will be able to restrict access based on a number of things: period of time, exporting of data, viewing certain elements within the data. So you could, if I'm a cost center manager, I only see my cost center. I won't be able to go off and see other cost centers. All of that framework and infrastructure is built into the product, but again, it's delivered in a way that it's easy to create profiles, and then Focus will then do the assignment in the background for you. So it's not too arduous to create those steps.
That's great. So we can wrap things up there. Just remember that we have the analytics webinar recording on our YouTube channel from last month, as Adam has alluded to. And don't forget to book yourself on our next webinar, which is in January, for budgeting and forecasting. Once again, thank you, Adam. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you again soon. Take care.